Get out of my lobby. This place isn't for your kind, the hotel manager barked, his voice slicing through the polished silence of the Lumino Skyline's grand entrance like a blade. The words weren't a slip, they were deliberate, sharp, and rehearsed, delivered with the weight of someone who believed he owned the space. Richard Holt, manager of the Lumino Skyline Hotel in downtown Chicago, stood behind the sleek marble counter, arms crossed, his face a mask of contempt. He stared directly at the woman before him, a black woman in a simple grey hoodie and fitted jeans, her long hair cascading in soft waves down her back. He didn't whisper, didn't hesitate. He spoke loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, as if his judgment was policy etched in stone. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that in exactly 12 minutes, the woman he'd just dismissed would dismantle his authority, fire his entire team, and reshape the very foundation of the hotel he thought he controlled. The air in the lobby thickened, guests froze, and a storm began to brew, not in shouts or chaos, but in the quiet, unyielding resolve of a woman who had faced this before and refused to let it stand again. Nora Williams stepped through the glass doors of the Lumino Skyline at 7:32 p.m., her sneakers silent against the gleaming marble floor. The Chicago skyline glittered through the towering windows, casting reflections that danced across the crystal chandeliers above. At 36, Nora carried herself with a quiet confidence, her tall, balanced frame moving with purpose, but no rush. She'd just landed from a 16-hour flight from Singapore, where she'd closed a deal to expand her hospitality empire into Asia. No assistant trailed her. No designer bag hung from her shoulder, just a black backpack, a phone, and a platinum credit card tucked in her pocket. Her long hair, usually pulled back for boardroom meetings, hung loose, framing her face as she approached the front desk. The lobby hummed with the low chatter of guests, business travelers in crisp suits, a family checking in with rolling suitcases, a couple sipping cocktails near the lounge. But as Nora crossed the floor, eyes followed her. Not because of her presence, she was understated, almost invisible in her casual attire, but because of what she represented to those who noticed. Someone who didn't fit their preconceived image of a luminous guest. Behind the desk stood Richard Holt, 45, his grey suit pressed to perfection, his thin lips set in a line that suggested he'd already made up his mind about her. Flanking him were two clerks, Jessica Lane, 32, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, her smile tight and performative, and Marcus Tate, 29, his posture rigid, his eyes already narrowing as Nora approached. None of them offered a greeting. No welcome to Luminos or even a nod. Instead, they watched her, their gazes sweeping from her hoodie to her jeans to her sneakers, as if her very existence was an anomaly they needed to solve. Nora stopped at the counter, her voice calm but clear. "I have a reservation. Presidential. Sweet names, Williams." Richard's eyebrows shot up, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face before he masked it with a smirk. "The presidential suite," he said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "That's one of our most exclusive rooms. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" He leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the counter, as if daring her to prove him wrong. Nora didn't flinch. She slid her ID and platinum card across the marble, her movements deliberate, her eyes locked on his. "Check the system," she said evenly. Richard picked up the card with 2 fingers, holding it like it might burn him. He turned it over, inspecting it as if it were a counterfeit bill. "This looks unusual," he muttered, loud enough for Jessica and Marcus to hear. Jessica pressed a button on the desk, her voice cutting through the lobby's hum over the intercom. Security, we have a potential issue at the front desk. Possible unauthorized guest attempting to access a premium suite. Nora's expression didn't change. She'd been here before, not in this exact lobby, but in moments like this. At 22, she'd walked into a boutique hotel in Atlanta. After a red-eye flight, dressed in sweats, her first big client meeting scheduled the next morning. The clerk had looked her up and down and said, "This isn't a hostile. You'll need to leave." She'd slept in her rental car that night. The sting of humiliation fueling a fire that would later build Lumino's hospitality group into a global empire. Now, standing in a hotel she owned, the same script played out again. She kept her voice low, steady. "I'm not here for trouble. I'm here for my room." Marcus scoffed, folding his arms. "People try this all the time. Flash a fancy card, claim a big reservation, and hope we don't check. We always check." Across the lobby, a young woman named Haejin Park, a Korean travel vlogger with 1 million followers, raised her phone. "I'm recording this," she whispered to her friend, Liam Carter, a freelance journalist who'd joined her for a Chicago getaway. Liam pulled out his phone, starting a live stream. "This is the Lumino skyline," he narrated quietly. "And something's going very wrong here." Their actions didn't go unnoticed. A concierge, Diego Alvarez, 24, and the newest hire, glanced up from his podium near the elevators. His eyes met Nora's for a split second, a flicker of recognition passing through them. He'd seen her name in the system that morning. Williams, tagged as owner override, but Richard's glare stopped him from stepping forward. Richard leaned closer, his voice louder now, performative. "We've seen this scam before. Fake cards, fake names, fake bookings. You think you can walk in here and fool us?" He handed the card to Marcus, who walked to a small cabinet behind the desk, opened a drawer, and placed the card inside a brushed steel safe with exaggerated care. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking audibly. "You're done here," Marcus said, a smirk tugging at his lips. Haejin's voice rose from the corner. "They just took her card. That's not policy, that's theft." Liam's stream was picking up viewers 50, then 100, comments flooding in. "Is this legal? What's happening? This is disgusting." Nora didn't move. Her voice remained calm, almost eerily so. "You're going to regret this." She pulled out her phone and tapped a message to her executive assistant, Lin Nguyen, who was in a corporate office 5 blocks away. "It's happening," Nora said quietly into the phone. Lin's response was immediate. "Systems ready. Say the word." Nora hasn't responded yet. She looked at Richard, whose smirk hadn't faded. "Your reservation's cancelled," he said, his tone final. "We don't tolerate deception. You're holding up real guests." He gestured toward a line forming behind her, where a businessman in a navy suit and a family of 4 stood watching, their expressions a mix of discomfort and curiosity. Nora turned slightly, her eyes scanning the crowd. "You mean the ones watching this right now?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to reach Haejin and Liam. Haejin stepped closer, her phone still raised. "This is going viral," she said, her voice firm. "People are going to see this." Liam's stream hit 500 viewers, the chat exploding. "This is racism. Call the manager out. She's not even fazed. Look at her." Diego, still frozen at his podium, took a hesitant step forward, but Richard's glare stopped him again. "She doesn't belong here," Richard snapped, his voice cutting through the lobby like a whip. "Get her out." Jessica, emboldened by Richard's lead, stepped out from behind the counter. "You need to leave now," she said, her tone sharp, "or we'll call the authorities." Nora held her gaze, unflinching. "Are you sure?" Jessica nodded, her smile tight. "Positive." Richard smirked again. "Go ahead, make a scene. It won't end well for you." Nora's eyes narrowed slightly, the first hint of something sharper beneath her calm. "That's the last time you speak to me like that." Diego finally spoke, his voice trembling but clear. "I saw her name in the system this morning. Nora Williams. Presidential suite. It's valid." Richard turned on him, his face reddening. "One more word, Diego, and you're out too." Nora tapped her phone again, her voice louder now. "Lynn, log this moment. Lock in the video timestamps." Lynn's voice came through, crisp and professional. "Logged. Systems ready." Liam, still streaming, zoomed in on the safe where Marcus had locked Nora's card. "It says N. Williams, VIP," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "It's real. She's real." Richard scoffed, his confidence unshaken. "Anyone can fake a card." "People like her," Nora cut him off, her voice low but piercing. "Finish that sentence. Go on." Richard faltered, the words dying in his throat as he noticed the growing circle of guests around them. Phones were raised, whispers turned to murmurs, and the lobby's polished veneer began to crack. Nora stepped forward, her presence commanding despite her casual attire. "You've just made the worst mistake of your career," she said, her voice steady but heavy with promise. Richard tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow. "You think so?" Nora's eyes didn't waver. "I know so." The tension in the lobby tightened like a noose. Marcus, still holding the key to the safe, raised it like a trophy. "This card is company property now," he declared, his voice ringing out. "Until the bank verifies it, you're not getting it back." He grinned, sure of his power, but Nora's silence was louder than his bravado. She stood unwavering, her long hair catching the light from the chandelier above, her face unreadable but resolute. Heijin shouted from the crowd, "That's theft. You can't just take her property." Liam's stream surged past 1,000 viewers, the comments a torrent of outrage. "This is unreal. They're stealing from her." Someone called the police. Jessica, sensing the shift in the room, stepped closer to Nora, her hand hovering near her arm. "You've been warned," she said, her voice sharp. "It's time to go." The moment her fingers brushed Nora's sleeve, the lobby erupted in gasps. Hajin's phone caught the movement, her voice rising. She just touched her. Liam's stream exploded, now at 2,000 viewers. The chat a frenzy. "That's assault system." Nora didn't react to the touch, but her eyes locked onto Jessica's with an intensity that made the younger woman freeze. "Don't do that again," Nora said, her voice low and controlled, but carrying a weight that silenced the room. Jessica's hand dropped, her confidence wavering. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and anger. Diego stepped forward, his voice stronger now. "She's telling the truth. I saw the reservation. It's real." Richard spun on him, his face flushed with fury. "You're done here, Diego. Pack your things." But Diego didn't back down. He looked at Nora, his eyes steady. "I won't let this happen again." Nora's phone buzzed softly in her hand. She glanced at it, a message from Lynn. "Access codes ready. Awaiting your command." She tapped a reply, her fingers swift and precise. Lynn, initiate, lockdown, freeze there. Credentials. Lynn's voice crackled through the speaker. Done. The system's locked. They're out. Richard's badge buzzed red at his waist, and he stared at it, stunned. Jessica and Marcus's badges did the same, their access to the Luminos system severed in real time. The lobby fell silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. Hajine's voice broke the stillness. You can't do this. This is illegal. Richard's face was a mask of panic now, his authority crumbling. You can't? Just fire us in front of everyone. Nora stepped closer to the counter, her long hair swaying slightly as she moved. I didn't fire you, she said, her voice calm but unyielding. You fired yourselves the moment you decided to treat a guest like a criminal. She turned to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over the guests, who were now openly staring, some filming, others whispering. This hotel is mine, she said, her voice clear and commanding, and I don't tolerate disrespect. The room erupted in gasps. Liam's stream hit 10,000 viewers, the comments a blur. She owns the place. This is insane. Justice. Hajin turned to Nora, her phone still raised. Are you Nora Williams, the CEO of Luminos? Nora didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked at Diego. Open the safe. Return my card. Diego moved quickly, entering a code and retrieving the platinum card. He handed it to her with a nod, his hand steady despite the tension. Nora took it, slipping it into her pocket without breaking eye contact with Richard. You thought you could humiliate me, she said, her voice low but resonant. You thought you could erase me from my hotel. But you're the ones who don't belong here. She turned to the crowd, her presence commanding every inch of the room. My name is Nora Williams, and I am the founder and CEO of Luminos Hospitality Group. Effective immediately, Richard Holt, Jessica Lane, and Marcus Tate are terminated. Their actions today violated everything this company stands for. The guests began to clap, a slow, purposeful applause that grew louder, filling the lobby with a sound that felt like vindication. A woman in a floral scarf stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion. I've stayed here for years, she said. I've seen this kind of thing before, but no one ever did anything. Thank you. Nora nodded, her expression softening. For the first time. It's over now, she said. This hotel belongs to every guest, no exceptions. Diego approached her, his voice low. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. Nora placed a hand on his shoulder. You spoke up when it mattered. That's enough. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. If anyone here has ever been mistreated at a Luminos property, you will be heard. Starting today, we're rebuilding this company from the ground up. The applause grew louder, a wave of support that drowned out Richard's final, desperate protest. This isn't over, he shouted, but no one listened. The lobby had turned, and Nora stood at its center, unshaken, unbreakable, a force that had reclaimed her place in 12 minutes flat. The safe door clicked shut behind Diego Alvarez as he handed Nora Williams her platinum card, the metallic sheen catching the light of the Luminos Skyline's crystal chandelier. The lobby, moments ago a battlefield of prejudice and power, now buzzed with a different energy, anticipation, disbelief, and the weight of a reckoning unfolding in real time. Nora stood at the center, her long hair framing her face, her grey hoodie and jeans a stark contrast to the opulent marble and gold of the Chicago hotel she owned. Her voice, calm but commanding, had just silenced Richard Holt, Jessica Lane, and Marcus Tate. Their access badges, blinking red, their authority, stripped in front of a growing crowd of guests. But the storm wasn't over. It was gathering strength, fueled by the phones raised high, the live streams surging past 10,000 viewers, and the truth that refused to stay silent. Nora's smile, subtle but sharp, signaled the next move. "You thought you could erase me," she said, her eyes locked on Richard, whose face had drained of color. "But now, you're the ones who've been erased." The words hung in the air, a promise of consequences yet to come, and in that moment, the luminous skyline became more than a hotel. It became a stage for justice. The crowd's applause hadn't faded when Richard, his voice cracking with desperation, tried to claw back control. "This is illegal," he shouted, slamming his hand on the counter. "You can't just fire us in front of everyone. There's protocol, procedures. You're ambushing us." His badge, now useless, dangled from his belt like a broken trophy. Jessica, her blonde bun unraveling slightly, gripped the edge of the counter, her eyes darting between Nora and the guests filming her every move. Marcus, who had moments ago smirked while locking Nora's card in the safe, stood frozen, his confidence shattered. Nora didn't flinch. She stepped closer to the counter, her presence filling the space like a quiet storm. "You ambushed yourselves," she said, her voice low but piercing. "You profiled me, humiliated me, and stole from me in my hotel. The only protocol you followed was your own bias." Haejin Park, the Korean vlogger whose phone had captured every second of the confrontation, shouted from the crowd. "This is live on TikTok, Twitter, everywhere. People are seeing this." Her stream, now pushing 20,000 viewers, was a flood of comments. "She's the CEO. Asterisk, this is unreal. Fire them all." Liam Carter, her journalist friend, panned his camera across the lobby, capturing the stunned faces of guests. A businessman in a navy suit, a family with 2 kids clutching their suitcases, an elderly woman in a floral scarf who nodded approvingly. "This is what accountability looks like," Liam narrated, his voice steady. "We're at the luminous skyline in Chicago, and the CEO just took her hotel back." Nora's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, a message from her executive assistant, Lin Nguyen, in the corporate office 5 blocks away. "System lockdown complete. Their credentials are void. Awaiting your next move." Nora tapped a reply, her fingers swift. "Lin, escalate the internal audit. I want every complaint log from this property for the past 2 years." Lin's voice came through, crisp and efficient, already pulling the data. "You want Carla on standby?" Nora's eyes flicked to Richard, who was now muttering to Jessica, his voice low but frantic. "Yes," Nora said. "Patch her through in 2 minutes." Diego, the young concierge who had risked his job to speak up, stood near the counter, his hands clasped tightly. He'd seen Nora's name in the system that morning, Nora Williams. Presidential suite, owner override, but Richard's threat had silenced him until the final moment. Now he stepped closer to Nora, his voice low. "Ms. Williams, I should have said something sooner. I saw your name, but I didn't." Nora raised a hand, stopping him gently. "You spoke when it counted, Diego. That's more than most." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising just enough to carry across the lobby. "This isn't just about me. This is about every guest who's been judged, dismissed, or erased because they didn't fit someone's idea of who belongs here." The elderly woman in the floral scarf stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "I've stayed here 3 times, she said, clutching her purse. Last year, I was told my room wasn't ready because I didn't look like a priority. Guest, I'm a retired nurse. I saved for months to stay here. Her words hit the room like a stone, rippling through the crowd. A man in a navy suit, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. I've seen it too. Last month, a colleague of mine, Indian accent, was asked for extra ID while I walked right through. It's not right. The murmurs grew louder, guests nodding, some pulling out their phones to share their own stories. Her jeans stream surged past 30,000 viewers. The comments, a cascade of outrage and support. This is systemic. She's calling it out. Luminos needs to answer for this. Liam zoomed in on Nora, who stood unwavering, her long hair catching the light as she addressed the crowd. If you've experienced mistreatment here or at any Luminos property, you will be heard. Starting now, we're opening direct lines for complaints. No filters, no excuses. The applause returned, louder this time, a wave of agreement that drowned out Richard's attempt to interject. This is a setup, he shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the crowd's resolve. Jessica, her face pale, stepped forward, her voice shaking. We were just following protocol. We didn't know who you were. Nora's eyes locked onto hers, unyielding. You didn't need to know who I was. You should have treated me like any guest, any person. But you chose to assume, to accuse, to steal. She gestured to the safe, now open, where her card had been locked away. You made that choice, and now you face the consequences. Richard, his face red with fury, slammed his hand on the counter again. You're blowing this out of proportion. We protect this hotel's reputation. People like you, he stopped himself, the words catching in his throat as he realized the crowd's eyes were on him, phones recording every syllable. Nora tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but razor-sharp. Go on, Richard, say it. Tell everyone what you mean by people like me. The lobby fell silent, the weight of her challenge hanging in the air. Richard's mouth opened, then closed, his confidence crumbling under the scrutiny of 100 eyes. Diego stepped forward again, his voice stronger now. I've worked here for 6 months, he said, addressing the crowd. I've seen this happen before. Guests who don't look the part, people of color, people with accents, people in casual clothes, they get questioned, delayed, dismissed. It's not policy, it's them. He pointed at Richard, Jessica, and Marcus, his hands steady despite the tremor in his voice. I logged 2 complaints last month about guests being profiled. They were ignored. Richard signed off on them himself. The crowd gasped, phones raised higher. Hajin's stream hit 50,000 viewers, the comments now a torrent. This is disgusting. Expose them, she's a hero. Liam turned his camera on Diego. Say that again, for the world, he said. Diego nodded, his voice firm. They buried complaints. They trained us to prioritize certain guests, white, wealthy, professional. It's not written down, but we all knew. Nora's phone buzzed again. She lifted it to her ear, her voice steady. Lynn patched Carla through now. A moment later, Carla Bennett's voice, sharp and authoritative, came through the speaker. Nora, we've locked their credentials. Across all Luminos systems, termination notices are being drafted. Do you want to proceed with full escalation? Nora's eyes didn't leave Richard's. Yes, she said. Terminate Richard Holt, Jessica Lane, and Marcus Tate, effective immediately. Freeze their access to all systems and log this incident for legal review. Carla's response was swift. Processing now. Richard's badge buzzed again, the red light a final confirmation of his dismissal. Jessica's hands trembled as she checked her badge, now useless. Marcus backed away from the counter, his earlier smirk gone, replaced by a look of panic. The crowd's applause returned, not loud or chaotic, but steady, purposeful, as if acknowledging a truth long overdue. Nora turned to Diego, retrieved the guest complaint logs from the system. I want them on my desk by morning. Diego nodded, moving to the computer with a confidence he hadn't shown before. Hadrian approached Nora, her phone lowered but still recording. Ms. Williams, this is blowing up online. People are calling you a legend. Do you want to say anything to them? Nora paused, her eyes scanning the crowd, guests, staff, the weight of their attention. Tell them this, she said, her voice clear. No one should have to prove they belong. Not in my hotel, not anywhere. And we're going to make sure that changes, starting now. The elderly woman in the floral scarf stepped forward again, her eyes glassy with emotion. I've never seen anything like this, she said. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you stood up for all of us. Nora nodded, her expression softening. Thank you, she said quietly. But this isn't about me. It's about every guest who's been made to feel less than human. Liam's stream surged past 70,000 viewers, the comments a mix of awe and outrage. She's rewriting the rules. This is what leadership looks like. Lumino's better change fast. He turned his camera to the crowd, capturing the growing Unity guests, stepping closer, forming a loose circle around Nora. Their phones still raised, but their faces showing something new, respect. A man in a navy suit approached Diego, his voice low. I've stayed here for years. I've seen what you're talking about. How can I help? Diego glanced at Nora, who nodded. We're setting up a guest feedback line, Diego said. You can share your story there. Nora's phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Lynn. Complaint logs accessed. You're not going to believe this, there's a pattern. Richard's been burying complaints for years, and it's not just him. Nora's jaw tightened. As she read the message, she stepped away from the counter, her voice low but firm. Lynn, pull everything. Cross-reference with regional oversight. I want names. Lynn's reply was immediate. On it. You're going to want to see this. The crowd was still buzzing, guests whispering among themselves. Some approaching Diego with questions, others sharing their own experiences. Hadrian's stream hit 100,000 viewers, the comments now a global conversation. This is bigger than one hotel. She's exposing the whole system. Nora Williams for president. Liam turned to Nora, his voice respectful. Ms. Williams, people want to know what's next. What do you do after this? Nora looked out over the lobby, her long hair catching the light as she moved. We rebuild, she said simply. We tear down every system that lets this happen. We listen to every guest who's been ignored, and we make sure this never happens again. The applause returned, louder now, a wave of support that filled the room. Nora turned to Diego. You're in charge of guest services for the rest of the night. Can you handle it? Diego nodded, his eyes bright with determination. Yes. Ma'am. Richard, still standing behind the counter, tried one last desperate move. You can't do this, he said, his voice shaking. You're ruining our lives over a misunderstanding. Nora turned to him, her gaze unflinching. You ruined your own lives when you decided to judge me before you knew me. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a choice you made, and now you live with it. Jessica, her voice barely above a whisper, spoke up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just following orders. Nora's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. You had a choice, Jessica. You chose to follow orders that hurt people. That's on you. Marcus, silent until now, stepped forward, his voice low. What happens to us now? Nora's response was immediate. You're done at Luminos. Your names will be flagged across our hiring network. If there's evidence of prior misconduct, we'll pursue further action. Now leave. The crowd parted as Richard, Jessica, and Marcus gathered their things, their heads bowed, their authority stripped. The guests watched in silence, no one offering sympathy, only the murmur of accountability following them out. As the glass doors closed behind them, Nora turned to the crowd, her voice steady. This hotel is yours. Every guest, every story, every voice. We're starting over, and we're doing it right. Diego moved to the computer, pulling up the reservation system to ensure no other guests were delayed. Hadrian approached Nora again, her phone now lowered. Ms. Williams, this is going global. People are sharing this everywhere. What do you want them to know? Nora paused, her eyes scanning the lobby marble floors, gold accents, and the faces of guests who had witnessed history. Tell them, she said, that respect isn't earned by how you look or what you wear. It's owed to everyone, and we're going to prove it. The lobby buzzed with a new energy, not of conflict but of possibility. Guests began approaching Diego, offering their contact information, sharing their stories. The elderly woman in the floral scarf handed Nora a business card. I'm Clara Mendoza, she said. I've got a story to tell, and I want to help. Nora took the card, her expression warm. We'll be in touch, Clara, thank you. Nora's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Carla. Audit's underway. We've found something big. Richard wasn't acting alone. Regional oversight was complicit. Nora's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. She stepped away from the crowd, her voice low. Lynn, Carla, I want a full report by morning. Names, dates, everything. This goes deeper than one hotel. Carla's voice came through, steady but urgent. Understood. We're pulling communications between Richard and the former regional director, Karen Voss. There's a pattern, Nora. It's ugly. Nora closed her eyes for a moment, not in defeat, but in resolve. She remembered a moment from her childhood, standing in a small diner in Atlanta with her mother, a single parent who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. The waitress had looked at them, their worn clothes and tired faces, and said, "We don't serve people like you here." Nora was 10, and the shame had burned into her bones. But it didn't break her, it sharpened her. It drove her to build Luminos, a company that promised every guest a welcome, no matter who they were. Now, standing in her hotel, she felt that same fire, but stronger, tempered by years of grit and strategy. She opened her eyes, her voice firm. Carla, escalate this to the board. I want a full review of every Luminos property. No stone unturned. Carla's response was immediate. Done. We're preparing a statement for the media. You're in control. Nora nodded, her gaze sweeping the lobby. The guests were no longer just spectators, they were allies, their phones still raised, their voices joining hers. Hajin's stream hit 200,000 viewers, the comments a global chorus. This is history. She's changing everything. Luminos is hers. Nora turned to Diego. Set up a temporary guest services desk. I want every guest here tonight to have their concerns logged. No one leaves feeling unheard. Diego nodded, moving with purpose, as he directed staff to assist. Clara Mendoza approached again, her voice soft but firm. I've got friends who've stayed here, Ms. Williams. They've got stories too. How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Nora met her gaze. We're building a system that listens. You'll be part of it if you're willing. Clara nodded, a smile breaking through. Count me in. Liam approached, his camera still rolling. Ms. Williams, the world's watching. What's your message? Nora paused, her long hair catching the light as she turned to face him. This isn't about one moment or one hotel, she said. It's about every time someone's been told they don't belong. We're tearing down those walls, starting tonight. The crowd erupted in applause again, louder, more unified. A sound that echoed beyond the marble and glass of the luminous skyline. As the night wore on, guests began sharing their stories with Diego, who logged each one with care. Hajin's stream continued, now a global phenomenon, shared across platforms without hashtags, the truth spreading like wildfire. Nora stepped to the side, her phone buzzing with another message from Lynn. Karen Voss's emails confirm she instructed managers to prioritize high-value guests. Richard followed her lead. We're digging deeper. Nora's jaw set, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about Richard, Jessica, or Marcus. It was about a system that had failed, and she was going to fix it. She looked out over the lobby. The chandeliers, casting their light across faces that now looked to her not with suspicion but with hope. This is just the beginning, she said, her voice soft but resolute. We're not just rebuilding a hotel. We're rebuilding trust. And as the guests nodded, their phones still raised, their voices joining hers, Nora knew that the storm she'd unleashed wasn't over. It was just getting started. The glass doors of the Luminos Skyline Hotel closed behind Richard Holt. Jessica, Lane, and Marcus Tate with a soft hiss, sealing their exit from the marble lobby that had been their stage of power just minutes ago. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the towering windows, indifferent to the upheaval that had just unfolded under the crystal chandeliers. Nora Williams stood at the center of the lobby, her long hair cascading down her back, her grey hoodie, and jeans a quiet defiance against the opulence around her. The crowd of guests, business travelers, families, and onlookers stood in a loose semicircle, their phones lowered but their eyes fixed on her, as if waiting for the next act in a drama that had already rewritten the rules. The air pulsed with a new energy, not of confrontation but of transformation, as if the very walls of the luminous skyline had exhaled years of buried truths. Nora's voice, steady and resolute, broke the silence. This hotel isn't just a place to stay, she said, her gaze sweeping the room. It's a promise that every guest belongs, no matter who they are. That promise was broken, but tonight we start rebuilding. The applause that followed was measured, purposeful, a collective acknowledgement that this wasn't the end but a beginning. Nora Williams, the black woman who had been dismissed as a fraud, had reclaimed her hotel in 12 minutes flat. But the real work of dismantling a system and forging something new was just beginning. Diego Alvarez, the young concierge now thrust into the role of acting guest services director, stood behind the counter, his hands steady as he logged guest complaints into the newly reset system. His badge, unlike those of the terminated staff, glowed green, a symbol of his unexpected rise. Nora turned to him, her voice calm but firm. Diego, Initiate the reform plan. Start from the top. Suspend all front desk operations until we've reviewed every active reservation. Diego nodded, his eyes bright with purpose. Yes, Ms. Williams, I'm on it. He moved to the computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he disabled the logins of Richard's former team and flagged their pending bookings for manual review. The crowd watched, some guests stepping forward to offer their contact information, others sharing quiet words of support. Clara Mendoza, the elderly woman in the floral scarf, approached Nora, her voice soft but resolute. I've seen too many places like this get away with treating people like they don't matter. You're doing what I've waited years to see. Nora met her gaze, her expression warm but unwavering. Thank you, Clara. But this isn't just about what happened tonight. It's about every time someone was made to feel invisible. We're going to change that. Clara nodded, clutching her purse tightly. I believe you, and I want to help. Nora took the business card Clara offered, slipping it into her pocket. You will, she said. We're setting up a guest advisory panel. Your voice will be part of it. Haejin Park, the Korean vlogger whose live stream had ignited a global firestorm, approached with her phone lowered, her eyes wide with Miss Williams, this is everywhere now. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, it's gone past 1 million views. People are calling this a revolution. Nora's lips curved into a faint smile, not of triumph, but of resolve. Let them call it what they want, she said, as long as they see the truth. Liam Carter, her Jean's journalist friend, stepped forward, his camera still rolling. The world's asking what's next. Ms. Williams, you fired the staff, exposed the problem. What happens now? Nora's gaze swept the lobby, taking in the faces of guests, the glimmer of chandeliers, the weight of expectation. Now, she said, we rebuild. Not just this hotel, but every Luminos property. We tear down every system that lets this happen, and we build one that listens. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a message from Lin Nguyen, her executive assistant. Audits pulling up serious dirt. Richard wasn't alone. Regional oversight was complicit. Karen Voss's emails are damning. Nora's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing as she read the words. She stepped to the side, her voice low. Lin, send me the summary. I want names, dates, everything. Lin's reply was swift. It's coming. You're not going to like it. Nora tapped a response, her fingers steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Patch Carla through. I want the board briefed within the hour. The lobby hummed with activity as Diego directed staff to set up a temporary guest services desk near the lounge. Guests began forming a line, not to check in, but to share their stories' experiences of being profiled, dismissed, or ignored at the Luminos skyline and other properties. A man in a navy suit, who had spoken up earlier, approached Diego with a notebook in hand. I'm a lawyer, he said quietly. I've stayed here for years, and I've seen what you described. I want to help with the complaint process. Diego nodded, handing him a tablet. We're logging everything. Your input will matter. Nora's phone buzzed again, this time with Carla Bennett's voice, crisp and authoritative. Nora, the board's on standby. We've pulled initial data from the Skyline's complaint logs. There's a pattern of suppression going back at least 18 months. Richard flagged dozens of complaints as resolved without investigation. And there's more. Kren Voss, the former regional director, was copied on emails instructing managers to prioritize high-value guests based on appearance and demographics. Nora's grip on the phone tightened, her mind flashing back. to a moment at 22, standing in a hotel lobby in Atlanta, her reservation confirmed but her presence questioned. The clerk had looked at her worn jacket and said, "You don't look like you belong here." That memory had fueled her rise, and now it fueled her resolve. "Carla," she said, her voice low but unyielding, "escalate this to a full company-wide. Audit every property, every manager, every buried complaint. I want it all." Carla's response was immediate. "Understood. We're drafting a public statement, but the media's already circling. X and Reddit are amplifying the footage. Hajin's stream is trending globally. You're in control, but we need to move fast." Nora nodded, her eyes scanning the lobby. "Let them talk," she said. "Let the world see what happens when we stop hiding." She turned to Diego, who was now coordinating with a small team of staff to handle guest inquiries. "Diego, suspend all new bookings for the next 48 hours. Redirect guests to our partner hotel, downtown. Offer them a complimentary night. I want this property to be clean before we reopen." Diego nodded, his voice steady. "Got it. I'm rerouting now." He glanced at the growing line of guests, some writing down their experiences, others speaking quietly with staff. Clara Mendoza approached again, this time with a younger woman at her side, her daughter, who clutched a tablet. "Ms. Williams," Clara said, "my daughter, Sophia, works in community organizing. She wants to help with your advisory panel." Nora met Sophia's gaze, seeing the same fire she'd felt at her age. "We'd be honored to have you," Nora said. "Diego will get your details." Hajin's stream hit 2 million views. The comments a global chorus. "This is what leadership looks like. She's tearing it all down. Luminos is hers." Liam approached Nora again, his camera still rolling. "Ms. Williams, people are asking about the bigger picture. Is this just about the skyline, or is Luminos changing everywhere?" Nora paused, her long hair catching the light as she turned to him. "This is about every guest who's ever been told they don't belong," she said. "Every complaint that was buried, every policy that was twisted to exclude. We're auditing every Luminos property at 2 hotels across the globe. No one gets a pass." The crowd erupted in applause again, louder now, a sound that carried beyond the lobby's walls. Guests began sharing their stories more openly, some approaching Diego with written notes, others speaking directly to Hajin, who had started a second stream to capture their voices. A woman with a toddler in her arms stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Last year, I was told my reservation was lost because I didn't look like a typical guest. I'm a single mum. I saved 4 months to stay here for my son's birthday." Nora knelt beside the boy, who clutched a small toy. "Car, you're welcome here," she said softly, "and we're going to make sure that never happens again." Nora's phone buzzed with another update from Lynn. Voss's emails show she built a guest prioritization system using AI to flag non-priority guests based on names, accents, and booking patterns. Richard was her protege, Nora's. Jaw set, her eyes narrowing. She remembered a moment from her early days at Luminos, when she'd caught a manager in Dallas dismissing a guest because their name sounded foreign. She'd implemented a zero-tolerance policy for profiling then, but clearly it hadn't been enough. "Lynn," she said, her voice low, "shut down the AI system. I want it offline by midnight, and get me everything on Vosser Communications, her directives, her allies." Nora's reply was swift. "It's done. The AI is offline, and we're pulling Voss's records." There's more. She had a network of managers across the Midwest following her lead. Nora's mind raced. piecing together the scope of the problem. This wasn't just about one hotel or one manager. It was a rot that had spread through her company, hidden behind polished desks and fake smiles. She turned to Carla, still on the line. I want a task force formed by morning. Independent investigators, no internal hires. We're digging up every buried complaint, every fake resolution, every manager who thought they could hide. Alice. Voice was steady. We're on it. The boards rattled. Nora, some want to keep this quiet to protect the stock price. Nora's response was immediate, her voice cold. The stock price can wait. Trust comes first. Tell them I'm not asking for permission. Carla paused, then replied, Understood. You've got full authority. Nora hung up, her eyes scanning the lobby. The guests were no longer just witnesses. They were part of something bigger, their voices amplifying hers. Hagin approached again, her phone now off. Ms. Williams, I've got contacts in media who want to cover this. Should I connect them to your team? Nora nodded. Do it. But no, spin just the truth. Diego called out from the counter, his voice steady. Ms. Williams, we've logged 37 complaints so far, just from tonight's guests. Some go back years. Nora walked over, her sneakers silent on the marble. Send them to Lynn. We're building a database, and every story gets heard. Diego nodded, his hands moving quickly as he coordinated with the staff. Clara Mendoza's daughter, Sophia, approached with a tablet, showing a draft proposal for the guest advisory panel. I've outlined a structure, Sophia said. Community input, anonymous reporting, and regular audits. Will you look at it? Nora took the tablet, scanning the document. This is good, she said. You're hired as a consultant, effective now. The lobby buzzed with purpose, guests and staff working together to document the past and shape the future. Hagin's stream hit 3 million views. The comments, a global movement. This is how you change things. Nora Williams is a legend. Luminos is done if they don't follow her lead. Liam turned to Nora, his voice respectful. Ms. Williams, people are saying this could redefine hospitality. What's your vision? Nora paused, her long hair swaying as she turned to face him. My vision is simple, she said. A hotel isn't just walls and bedsits, a place where everyone is seen, heard, and respected. We're building that, starting now. Nora's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from a former Luminos manager in Portland, sent through a secure channel. I worked under Voss 5 years ago, the message read. She trained us to flag problem guests, people who didn't fit the brand image. It wasn't written down, but we knew. I'm sorry I didn't speak up then. Nora's heart sank, not with anger, but with clarity. This was bigger than she'd imagined, a system designed to exclude, hidden behind the sheen of luxury. She forwarded the message to Carla with a single instruction. Track him down. We need his testimony. She turned to Diego, who was now managing a team of staff, logging complaints. Diego, set up a direct line for former employees. Anyone who wants to come forward, anonymously or not, gets a channel. Diego nodded, his voice firm. I'll make it happen. Nora stepped away from the counter, her eyes scanning the lobby. The chandeliers glittered, the marble gleamed, but the space felt different. Not a monument to wealth, but a battleground for change. She remembered another moment, at 16, standing in a hotel lobby in Charlotte with her mother, who'd saved for a rare weekend getaway. The clerk had looked at them and said, "This area's for guests only." They'd been escorted out, the shame burning into Nora's bones. That memory had driven her to build Luminos, and now it drove her to rebuild it. Carla's voice came through again, urgent. Nora, we've got a problem. Voss's network wasn't just managers. She had ties to a third-party vendor running the AI system. They're pushing back, saying we can't shut it down without legal repercussions. Nora's eyes narrowed, her voice cold. Tell them they're done. Terminate the contract. If they want to fight, they'll face me in court. Carla paused, then replied, Got it. I'll handle it. Nora hung up, her mind racing. The AI system designed to streamline operations had been twisted into a tool for exclusion, and she'd let it happen under her watch. The weight of that failure settled on her shoulders, but she didn't buckle. She turned it into fuel. She addressed the crowd again, her voice clear. Tonight, you've seen what happens when silence is broken. But this isn't just about one hotel or one night. We're launching a full review of every Luminos property at 2 hotels, thousands of staff, millions of guests. If you've been wronged, you will be heard. If you've been silenced, you will be amplified. The applause returned, a thunderous wave that shook the lobby. Guests stepped forward, offering their stories, their support, and their belief in what Nora was building. Clara Mendoza approached again, her daughter at her side. Ms. Williams, Clara said, I've got friends in other cities who've stayed at Luminos hotels. They've got stories. How do we get them to you, Nora? Handed her a card with Lynn's contact information. Call her, we're listening. Hajin's stream hit 5 million views. The comments a global outcry. This is bigger than hospitality. She's changing the game. Nora Williams is unstoppable. Liam approached, his camera now off. Ms. Williams, I've got contacts at major news outlets. They want an interview. Should I set it up? Nora nodded. Do it. But no fluff pieces. I want journalists who'll ask hard questions. Liam grinned. That's my kind of reporter. Diego called out from the counter, his voice steady. Ms. Williams, we've logged 62 complaints so far. Some are from years ago guests who gave up because no one listened. Nora walked over, her sneakers silent on the marble. Keep logging, she said. Every story matters. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. If you've got a story, share it. If you've got a voice, use it. This hotel, this company belongs to you now. The applause was deafening, a sound that carried beyond the lobby, beyond Chicago, into the world watching online. Nora's phone buzzed with another update from Lynn. Voss's emails show she had a secret directive: protect the brand image by prioritizing certain guests. She trained managers like Richard to enforce it. We've got names of 6 others involved. Nora's jaw set, her eyes blazing. Lynn, cross-reference those names with current staff. If they're still employed, suspend them pending investigation. Lynn's reply was immediate. Done. We're pulling their records now. Nora turned to Carla, still on the line. I want a public statement out by morning. Full transparency. Admit the failures. Outline the reforms. No PR spin. Carla's voice was steady. It's drafting now. You're setting the tone, Nora. The lobby was now a hub of activity guests, sharing stories, staff logging complaints, Diego coordinating with a quiet efficiency that belied his youth. Clara and Sofia Mendoza worked with other guests to organize a temporary feedback station, handing out tablets and pens. Hajin approached Nora again, her eyes bright. Ms. Williams, people online are starting a ##Lu Minos reborn. They're saying you're not just fixing a hotel, You're fixing an industry. Nora's smile was faint but genuine. It's not about me, she said. It's about them. She gestured to the crowd, to Clara, to Diego, to the guests, who had refused to stay silent. 3 months later, the Lumino's Skyline Hotel bore little resemblance to the place where Nora had been humiliated. The marble floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still glittered, but a new energy filled the space of warmth, a welcome that hadn't been there before. A framed portrait of Nora hung near the check-in desk, not as a boast but as a reminder. Beneath it, a plaque read, "This space belongs to every guest. No exceptions." Guests walked in and out without fear of judgment, their names checked with respect, their presence valued. Diego, now permanently appointed general manager, stood behind the counter, his badge gleaming green, his leadership redefining what the Skyline could be. The reforms Nora had launched rippled far beyond Chicago. Lumino's hospitality group audited all 82 properties, uncovering hundreds of buried complaints and dozens of complicit managers. A task force of independent investigators, led by a former civil rights attorney, reviewed every case, reinstating staff who had been wrongfully dismissed and compensating guests who had been wronged. Nora implemented a new equity compliance panel, with Clara and Sofia Mendoza as founding members, ensuring guest voices shaped policy. Anonymous feedback systems were rolled out across all properties, and every employee from concierge to CEO underwent mandatory retraining with no exceptions. Hae-Jin and Liam, whose streams had sparked a global movement, were invited to speak at Luminos's first leadership summit, where they shared the power of real-time accountability. "We didn't plan to start a revolution," Hae-Jin said on stage. "We just refused to look away." Nora, sitting in the audience, nodded, her eyes fixed on the future. She'd launched Luminous Forward, a diversity and inclusion initiative focused on measurable outcomes, not empty promises. Diego was named National Advisor for Frontline Guest Experience. His courage in the lobby is now a cornerstone of the company's ethos, but the past refused to stay buried. A week after the incident, a former employee from a Lumino's property in Miami reached out, his voice heavy with guilt. "Voss wasn't just a bad apple," he said. "She built a system to exclude. We were told to flag guests who didn't fit names, accents, clothes. It was never on paper, but we knew." Nora thanked him, passing his testimony to Carla and the legal team. The revelation confirmed what she'd suspected. The Skyline incident was a symptom of a deeper disease, one she was determined to eradicate. As news of the confession spread, more former employees came forward, their stories painting a picture of a company that had hidden its flaws behind luxury. Nora formed an internal task force to rehire staff dismissed under questionable circumstances, offering settlements to those who chose not to return. Every new manager underwent a rigorous accountability orientation, and Nora made it clear: silence would no longer be rewarded, and truth would no longer cost anyone their job. Nora's legacy, once defined by her quiet rise as a billionaire who built an empire from grit, was now something more: a reformer who didn't just apologize, but acted. At the inaugural Luminos Forward Summit, she stood before a crowd of employees, guests, and advocates, her voice steady. "Hospitality isn't about the smile you give," she said. "It's about the respect you assume. We failed that test, but we're passing it now." The audience rose to their feet, not for a CEO, but for a woman who had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for change. And as the Luminos Skyline stood reborn, its doors open to all. Nora knew the real work-building trust, one guest at a time, was just beginning.